Welcome to the Work Trends podcast from Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan Ambiro. Every week, I interview interesting people who are reimagining work. And be sure to check out our Work Trends Twitter chat events calendar located at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends podcast, sponsored by Home Services Relocation. Today, we are here to talk about the future of work from home and what it means for relocation benefits. According to Pew Research, 54% of employees say that most or all of their job responsibilities can be fulfilled from home. Regardless of the swings of the pandemic, employees are able to, and they're willing to, work from home, just not their current home. According to Tech Republic, 75% of employees would consider relocating if work from home arrangements become permanent. That same Tech Republic survey found that 65% of employees are willing to take a pay cut if it meant working from a location of their choice, which opens everybody up to, guess what? More affordable living options. The catch, of course, is that there are legal implications of out-of-state employees. Never mind the challenge of managing employees you can't see in person. And many workplaces aren't ready for that transition yet. Here to talk with us about the future of long-distance work is Gary Connerly, an expert on relocation with some useful opinions about what relocation will look like in the work-from-home world. But first, here's some background on Gary. Gary Connerly serves as Director of Client Advisement for Home Services Relocation. He consults with clients to enhance mobility programs and is a trusted human resources professional with both domestic and international experience. For over 20 years, Gary has developed cost-effective relocation services for employers in a variety of industries. He currently lives in Jackson, Mississippi with his wife and daughter. He previously lived in South America for 10 years. He's fluent in Spanish, giving him a deep understanding of multicultural requirements for companies in the Americas, Asia, and Europe. He is a fascinating person. I'm so excited to have him here. I know you've got a lot of knowledge to share with us, Gary, so let's just jump right in.
Oh, Megan, you're embarrassing me. Thank you, but you're embarrassing me. And hey, we're recording this right after the break, so I'll start by saying Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, and thank you for having me.
You got it. Thanks for being here. And I have to tell you, when I think of relocation, it's in the context of a new hire that the company needs to move for a position. Has the pandemic changed how a corporation views relocation benefits?
So the easy answer is, and I'm Captain Obvious here, but yes. The pandemic has caused significant changes in how HR is supporting employees, helping employees who need to relocate for a business reason. But perhaps more importantly for your listeners, the pandemic is changing how employees view work. And it has led to a reevaluation of their own personal circumstances. And this is mostly due to just how prolonged we have been in a remote work environment. You know, when I look at where we are now, and we have March coming up, I vividly remember where I was in March of 2020. It's crazy to think that we're quickly approaching the 2-year mark of living in a COVID-19 environment and a remote work environment. Companies were forced to move very quickly to protect their employees, and they did that by going to a work from home setting. I think what has surprised many of us is just how successful most employees have been at doing their job from home. Remote work now has been the norm for all of us for the past 22 months. Companies that have attempted to reopen their office have received pushback from employees expressing that they don't necessarily want to return to the office. But one of the biggest changes in terms of relocation is the employee who, for whatever reason, and we can certainly get into the reasons why, but the employee who decides that he or she no longer want to live in the location where their office or where the company's headquarters is located, perhaps they no longer want to live in a major metropolitan area So if I were your listeners, I would ask, what do I do? What do I do when an employee comes to their manager or comes to HR and says that they want to keep working for the company, but they desire to move to another state? Work has evolved from the idea of working from home to now the concept of working from anywhere. So, how does HR react? How do business leaders react when they are faced with that situation?
I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to live in Hawaii right now? Or the Caribbean? Come on, Gary. I mean,
I know
really?
that you're joking, but we have real world examples of employees saying, I always wanted to live in Costa Rica. So if I can work from home, why can't I work from anywhere? Why not? I mean, why not let me move to San Jose, Costa Rica and work from there, right? The employee thinks that's no big deal. And I hope that every listener out there is rolling their eyes right now because we all know just how big a deal that would be.
You know, Gary, knowing that retention, recruitment are always top of mind for talent acquisition and HR, how does relocation support these initiatives?
Since you brought up retention, I don't know if you saw here recently, but HRO Today magazine, they conduct a survey every year of the top concerns that are faced by HR leaders. And in 2021, by far, their number one concern was retention. And it very well should be. The quit rate, the numbers for November were just released by the Bureau of Labor. And if you haven't seen it yet, the numbers were at an all time high. 4.5 million employees walked out the door in November. And that was up from 4.2 who resigned in October and 4.4 who resigned in September. So when a valued employee comes to you and makes a request that they want to move to another state, what we're witnessing is that most companies are approving that request. Losing an employee, especially an employee who has been upskilled, is a very expensive proposition, and it can have a significant impact on the business and the business's goals. In terms of recruiting, the relocation process is very much a critical part of onboarding. It's often the first impression that an employee will receive about the culture of their new employer. Many years ago, the trend suddenly became that companies were just providing a bonus to their employees. In our industry, we call that a lump sum. We're just going to give someone a lump sum amount and tell them to go out and manage the move on their own. Now that pendulum is swinging back towards, we really do want to find and hire a professional company that can take a managed approach towards this process. In certain industries, we're seeing candidates actually turn down offers. To give an example, right now that's very prevalent in healthcare. They're struggling to bring employees on board, and one of the reasons why an employee says, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to take this job, is a lack of support when it comes to relocation. So, in my opinion, HR at a minimum needs to provide guidance, education, and resources for any and all relocating employees. And if they're in a really competitive situation, I do think the company should engage with a relocation management partner and develop policies to outline the assistance that a prospective candidate and their family would receive should the employee accept their offer and decide to onboard with the company.
Yeah, because I'm going to say there's challenges here. Let's talk about that a little bit. What will employees and companies face with this type of request?
So let's start with the company's challenges. Let's assume that it's a state where the company does not have any employees currently. Could the company need to first register to conduct business in that state? And I'm not an expert in payroll, but they certainly would need to set processes in place to do withholdings for income tax purposes and for year-end W-2 purposes. Another question the company must address is the possibility of creating a nexus in that state and the resulting tax liability that a company could face. And this is a real hot topic right now in the United States because the laws vary from state to state to state. So The employee, again, might think, well, this really shouldn't be any big deal if I want to just move from one state to another, right? That's no problem. But they don't realize that there's so much more to it from a corporate standpoint. And these are all things that HR has to take into account before they approve the request. What about labor regulations? What if they're moving to a state that has significantly more stringent labor regulations versus the state where you're currently faced? So there are many different things that HR leaders, that business leaders would have to look into before they approve such a request. For the employee, even if you moved just 5 years ago, relocating right now is more challenging. COVID-19 has had a serious impact on providers of moving services and other services related to relocation. They would find it more difficult to find resources to support their move. This ends up causing additional stress on the employee, stress on the employee's family, and that stress bleeds over into a lack of productivity. So truly, if they're left on their own, there's a chance that things could go really, really wrong.
I mean, clearly there's a lot of dots to connect here. I mean, does the company have a duty of care responsibility for the employee who is requesting to move?
So the duty of care question is truly the $64,000 question, if you will. And I know I just aged myself, but you know what I mean. Does the company have a responsibility to provide some support in a situation where it's the employee asking to move? Given that it's the employee who's making this request, the company would not have a budget. They would not have funds that had been set aside to help financially. But to give you a direct answer, my opinion is that yes, a company does have a duty of care to provide some support to an employee, even in a situation where it's the employee who's making the request to relocate. If the company fails to provide guidance, that can lead to a disaster for both the employee and for the corporation. There are many guides that can lead to a successful and a stress-free move, and those guides can be obtained from reputable moving companies. They can be obtained from reputable relocation companies, usually free of charge.
And the key word here is reputable. Let's talk about how companies can help educate employees about relocation and set expectations about moving. I mean, it's stressful for sure, but what else can we be doing for educational purposes here?
Yeah, so your audience is going to think that we'd pre-planned this, and we didn't. But you were absolutely correct. The challenge can be finding the reputable provider, especially in a situation where it's the employee who's going to go out of their pocket to pay for these expenses. What they typically do is exactly what they shouldn't do. What they typically do is go to the internet and begin to use the internet as their source to shop for things like a moving provider. The internet is the playground of what the FBI calls rogue movers. And these are truly criminals who are committing fraud every single day against individuals looking to move either locally or from one state to another. So companies should educate the employee about the risks that they face and should set realistic expectations about the time involved. I'll add that it's very much a situation where proper planning needs to take place to ensure that we don't have that disaster occur, that we don't end up a victim of a fraudulent moving company. So what can they do? HR professionals can reach out to a relocation firm asking about the possibility of benefits that are provided free of charge, to provide guidance on reputable professional moving companies, asking for guidance about discounts that could be provided to an employee, discounts for an employee who needs to sell a home, discounts for an employee who's looking to buy a home, or other rebates that are generally provided by either relocation companies, moving companies, by companies that are in this business. There are ways that the employee can see some financial gain in the process of selling a home and buying a home if they know who to talk to first. Does that make sense?
This, Gary, makes total sense, and we so appreciate your sage on this because you're right. There is a lot of dark stuff out there on the internet. So please avoid, if you're here in the audience listening, we're here to help.
I'm going to piggyback there for a minute if I can. In 2020, the Better Business Bureau released a study that they had been conducting for the past 10 years specific to fraud in moving. It's a free PDF that anyone could obtain if they simply search for Better Business Bureau and Guide to a Stress-Free Move, or I think it's even Avoiding Pitfalls in Moving. That's a great place to start for anyone who is considering moving from one state to another.
Awesome. Let's talk trends. What do you see happening in the future, and how is this going to impact recruiting in HR?
Well, we just talked about the quit rate in Q4 of 2021. I think the competition for talent, we all know that it is currently intense. I think it will remain intense for the next 12, 18, 24 months. I know for a fact, just from companies that are reaching out to me, that it is going to be necessary for companies to expand their search. I've had business leaders call me and say, we're here headquartered in Dallas. We need to hire people. We've never had a challenge hiring locally. And now here we are in 2021, 2022, and I simply can't fill my open positions. So for the first time ever, Gary, I'm having to consider searching out to other states. And so then what happens if I find a great candidate in Virginia? The next step is going to be I need to relocate that employee from Virginia to Texas. I've never done that before. Help me. So relocation is tied to meeting those talent goals, meeting the business growth goals. I see that continuing, and I see due to Omicron, I see the current environment of work from home, at least here in the next few months, continuing. Those who had predicted that they would be opening their office here in the first quarter are already saying, hang on a minute.
Not
Maybe
so much.
not.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we here have looked at the near future. If I was to have you dust off your crystal ball and look a little bit further out, any major predictions for the future of the workplace, say in the coming decade?
Well, I'll start by saying, what have we learned? Studying history is a great way to predict the future. So I think what we've learned in the pandemic is that working remotely has certain advantages. One of the reasons why employees want to relocate away from their corporate office is they're becoming frustrated. They had become frustrated with their commute times. Suddenly they're working from home. Is that perhaps an additional 2 hours per day that they're no longer spending in the car or on a train? At the same time, being in the office, engaging with your peers has its advantages. Like everyone else in the world, I'm becoming fatigued from video conferences. I miss having a chance to go into the office and engaging face to face with my coworkers, my colleagues, and the relationships that you have in person and in the office. So I'd say my long-term prediction is that the hybrid model is not going to go away anytime soon. If a company can meet its business goals, and that was kind of the surprise that we have, for the most part, we have. And if remote or a hybrid work environment leads to a happier employee and even perhaps a more productive employee, then what reason would we have to ever return to an in-office 5 days a week work setting? I really see hybrid being here to stay. And in listening to other podcasts of yours, I would agree that employers will need to be flexible in terms of allowing those employees who want to work remote, giving them permission to do so. I'll add, and this is a little bit of a tease for you, and perhaps it's a tangent, but we believe that we will continue to see businesses evaluating the location of their headquarters and possibly relocating those headquarters for a variety of reasons. Now, that's not something new. That's been going on for decades. But my point to you is here in the past 12 months, we've helped just over 10 companies who have made the decision that for one reason or another, they've decided that they're moving their entire headquarters, either a few states away or in some cases entirely across the country. I don't see that going away. I think companies there are real financial reasons and quality of life reasons as to why companies will continue to migrate to tax-friendly states.
Gary Connerly, you did it again. You got smart on us and we're better off for it. See that?
Megan, you're making me blush. Okay, for anyone who has any questions, especially for anyone who is considering relocating their headquarters, just drop us a note. You can reach us at relo@homeservices.com.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Megan. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Work Trends Podcast, your favorite source for all that's new and exciting in the world of work. If you love what we do here, make sure to share our podcast with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to tune in for our next episode. Catch up with you next time. Thanks to listening to Work Trends from Talent Culture. Join us every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern for a live Twitter chat with our podcast guest. To learn more about guests featured on today's show, visit the show notes for this episode at talentculture.com and help us spread the word. Subscribe to Work Trends wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a rating, review in iTunes. Share Work Trends with your coworkers, your friends. Look forward to it. See you next time.